If you haven't realized that the world is under attack by tyrannical Satanists controlled by interdimensional reptilians and demons, then where have you been? You know, it's been going on for quite a while. Part of the struggle against this tyranny that we're currently facing worldwide is that a lot of us have had to become acquainted with how the legal system works and how what common law is and what natural law is. And I'm seeing it all over the world. I've had Peter from Claim Your Straw Man. I've had other people talking about private trusts. I had Smoke and Mirrors author Edward Fitzgerald on the other week talking about the Magna Carta and affidavits. And I think it's really important that we speed up this knowledge because it's down to us. We the people means it's not just a thing for America, it's the whole world. And in an interview I did recently, I was introduced to the work of a couple of guys in Canada who go by the handle of Hammerhead Garage. And I'm very pleased to say hello to you guys today. How's it going?
Hey, folks.
Good. How are you?
Thanks for having us on, Mark. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Let's start with giving us a bit of background as to what you've been doing, because it was from a fellow Canadian that I found out about you, and then you got in touch, and here we are now, which is great. I love the way that works because this is how we spread the word, and it's important. There's a lot of Canadians watch my show that might not have heard of you, and there's, you know, this is the way this spreads the word. So, what have you been up to? What are you doing? How are you helping people? And are you optimistic about the future?
You want to go ahead? I'll let Gordy take it, and then I'll chime in.
Yeah. Well, given what's been going on the past 3 years, people haven't been able to sleep through their lives anymore and just continue going to work and going home and doing the regular. So because of all the stuff that's been going down, you've been having to look and pay attention. And as you start looking down the rabbit holes, all kinds of things start opening up. And the big thing that really hits us is the legal system and the policy enforcers that they call themselves policemen, and they're supposed to be there to protect us, and they're actually not there to protect us, and these kind of things. And we can see that all of us around the world can attest to that, because they're allowing the criminals and the government to continue to do what they want, while the people suffer. So how we met, I actually did run in the last provincial election in Nova Scotia, hopefully trying to make a difference for the people. And I was doing videos doing that. And that's how I met Sean. He saw my videos and we kind of thought the same. So figured we'd get coffee and then we become brothers. So now we come together with this common law court thing. And we're trying to take that across the country, basically teaching people that they have rights that they're not aware that they have. And the legal system is basically raping us and taking them all away from us. And we're trying to show them that, you know, you have them, they're inherent. So.
Yeah, because that's the point, is it? The right. It's not about us reclaiming our rights. We've already got them. They're inherent. It's just that we've been kept in the dark about them. And then this fraudulent maritime law thing's been put on top that they then fraudulently get us to consent to, and then agree to represent our straw man via the birth certificate and everything else that goes on. And people are starting to wake up to this. So you're doing talks. You've got your YouTube channel. Have you got a website for this common law court in Canada?
We haven't created that yet. We're in the process right now of writing our constitution and our declaration, and we're setting up the membership. And also, we're encouraging everybody to get their certificate of live birth, which I think Andre mentioned that on your program. It's basically the foundational document that doesn't have any fraud attached to it. It's the one with your parents' wedding signatures when you were at the hospital, the one that the government took and then mailed you back approximately 7 days later, the fraudulent birth certificate, which, as you guys know, is not the same document. It's completely different. One of them has your family name. Here in Canada, you go to Vital Statistics, which used to be attached to the hospital that you were born in, but now it's an external building. It's government run, and they have a certified true copy of that document. You pay a fee. I think mine was $45. I think Gordon's was around that. And in Gordy's case, he had it within 10 minutes of going in there. I had to get mine mailed from Prince Edward Island because that's where I was born. But they asked me why I wanted it. I told them it was to go overseas, for work overseas. So it wasn't an issue. That being said, we have a bunch of folks in New Brunswick that are having problems getting that document because the government is saying that they don't have it or they don't give it out. So right now we have 14 people that have freedom of information requests in with the government of New Brunswick to get an official answer as to where we go forward to get it.
Are they actively trying to stop people getting this now? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so that's the thing. And so when you talk to people and you explain to them that if the government's blocking you from accessing something, there's a reason for that. And obviously that's to keep the jig in play, right? They don't want people to realize and stuff. I had no issue when I went to Halifax. Like I said, it was 5 or 10 minutes. I told them I was traveling. There was no issue. And I tried to tell people at the time, like, you should go right away. Because the more people that go, they're going to start waking up and they're going to start blocking it. So the premier in New Brunswick is actually the one responsible for blocking them from getting their copy at this point. But hopefully, by creating the private membership association, we're going to put a little bit more power behind these individuals. So now it's going to be an association with thousands of people behind them that's going to give them a little bit more weight, maybe pressure them a little bit more to pass over that document.
Yeah, because lawfully they can't keep it, right?
Right.
It's not their document. It's every bit your property. It's something that your mother and father signed, and it has all your pertinent information on it. And again, this isn't the corporation that they created with that document. This is your flesh and blood record of your physical flesh and blood body being on this earth, on that planet. Yeah. So no, they don't have a right to hold that information. What we're trying to do with this private membership club is create our own common law ID and have a road package that we can show police that gives us the lawful right to drive, as we all know we have in common law, without licenses, travel, without an official governmental ID license, and without governmental registration, and without even governmental insurance. Although we're planning on, and we're in process now, speaking to a man who's going to help us with surety bonds to help us have some sort of a bond, so we're not driving around without any protection if we happen to be in an accident. And again, there's only one rule in common law, and there's only ever been one, and it's called do no harm. And it applies to just about everything you can imagine. So that's a pretty easy act to follow, is just do no harm. Don't have fraud in your contracts. Don't harm or defraud or hurt anybody unless you're in the defense of your family and your rights and your property. So we're trying to teach people that there is a system that's always been here, and they can rely on that system, and they don't have to rely on the fraudulent, corrupt Admiralty law system anymore that we've all been led to believe is the only system that's available to us. So we're in the process of educating people via foundational common law knowledge and teaching, plus the creation of the private membership club, plus the creation of things that we can do to we're helping a lady in Halifax obtain her property, her children, back from CPS. And we're going to be teaching people how to do that and what the remedies are there. And also the traffic court, how you can bring common law into traffic court and turn the script. You can take it from an Admiralty law situation and turn it into a common law situation very quickly if you know the right terms and the right way to go about it. So that's just some of the things we're involved with right now at the present time.
Well, I've been telling people since I started this channel how important this is, but I've never gone super deep into it because I cover a lot of subjects. And I started out as a part-time podcaster because it was during 2020. I've got 5 kids. I had a business, but it's now taken over my life, and I'm getting deeper and deeper into it. And I've done a number of things. And one of the stories that I've told my viewers before, but I'll tell you guys because I think you'll find it amusing, is, I don't know if they have a TV license in Canada, do they?
Yep.
You do?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Because in the US,
CRTC, I think.
So
yeah, like the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
just like the UK. So I came home one day and realized that my kids were hypnotized by the TV, and I was done with it. So I unplugged it and I said, I'm not paying the license again. I knew they were going to come and see me at some point because we got brought up in the 70s with TV adverts of vans going down the street with beep, 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 and people shitting themselves because you go to prison if you didn't pay £100 license fee for the right to have a fucking TV, right? So they came and I'd done a little bit of research. This is about 2013, and I had my phone camera on. And when they came, they said, "Are you Mr. Atwood?" And I went, "I'm not answering that question. I have no contract with you, and I am filming this for posterity in case you do anything unlawful." And then there's beautiful sentence I learned, which was, "I revoke your implied right of access to this property. Please leave." And I was shaking when I was doing it because it was like stepping outside of the Matrix, right? And it was like, oh, I'm actually doing it, right? And then the guy just turned around and walked off the property, and I was like, whoa.
See, that's the thing. If you know what your true power is and you stand in your truth, there's nothing they can do to you, because contract law is common law. Common law is contract law. And if you realize that there's no contracts unless you were given full disclosure at the time of the contract, unless you signed it with your wedding signature and you knew everything about the contract, it doesn't exist. So therefore, if you don't have a contract with them, then they don't have anything at all other than your willingness to participate or to comply or to understand what they're doing. So the minute you figure that out, it's freeing. It's very freeing to know, right?
The key
it is
like
you
yourself,
you have to step through it. Sorry.
People are scared.
Yeah.
People are scared like yourself when you were doing that, right? And so that's why we're trying to do what we're trying to do. And interestingly enough, another powerful piece of what we're doing is I actually have a traffic court coming up in April 5th, and that is going to be done under common law. And I'm sure they don't expect that to happen when I get there, but that's how it's going to be dealt with. So we're going to actually show people like the actual action of how this is done, and not being afraid. And you don't need to be afraid. You know, you just go in there, you know what you need to know, you do what you need to do, and it's that simple. They don't have any authority over them. The judge that's wearing that black robe is no different than you and I talking. They don't have any authority, and then they can't make any judgments because they don't have any jurisdiction over us. And when people go in there and they think this judge is above us, they always have this elitist idea and attitude, and these people aren't. Like you don't even have to refer to them as a judge. You can call them by their first name.
Bill or Frank or Ed or George or whatever his first name is, that's what we're going to call them.
Well, you should do. I mean, you should do, research. You should do research on who the judge is before you go in, right? And because they've got LinkedIn profiles, they've got websites, they've got all sorts of stuff, and you find out most about them. There's so many things I want to talk about, and I want to talk about the court a bit further, but I want to tell you the rest of the story about the TV license because you'll like it. So the guy was sat outside in his van making phone calls, you know, finding out what to do, and he wasn't going anywhere. So I walked over to the van, and he put his window down, and he asked me the same questions again. Are you Mr. Atwood? And I said, I'm not answering that question. I said, but if I was, I would never pay this license because if you're asking me to break the law. And he said, how do you mean? I said, because this is for the BBC, and the BBC reported on Tower 7 collapsing 20 minutes before it actually fell on 9/11. Therefore, if I paid this license, I would be knowingly supporting an organization that was supporting terrorism, which would contravene subsection 16 of the 2006 Anti-Terrorism Act. And he just looked at me and he went, I'm not getting anything out of you, am I? I went, no, you're not. See you later. And he drove off.
Well, one thing you can ask them, Mark, is if the cop comes to the window or policy enforcer, whoever it is, just simply say, is this a transaction for a securities interest? And if he says yes, then you say, well, I don't authorize that. You need my authorization to proceed with that. And if he says no, then you say, well, I really have no basis for talking to you right now. Have a good day and be on your way. And I guess what a lot of folks are doing now is they're presenting these policy enforcers with these Form 8300s. Are you familiar with that? It's basically remittance form for tax purposes for like a W-9 for the IRS and for other tax agencies. because a lot of these de facto policy enforcers are taking in scads of money, and it's not all getting reported properly. So apparently they're extremely afraid of these Form 8300s and these W9s. So that's something we may put in our road package to our membership so that they can have a copy of that to give to the policy enforcer.
Have you written all of this stuff down? Is there any way of people? Yeah, for example, I did actually think about doing this about a year ago, just creating like a handbook which says in this situation, this is what you say. In that situation, that is what you say. And this is why you say it. Because people have to understand why they're saying this stuff, don't they?
Well, they comprehend it.
The problem
comprehend.
The problem is when you speak, you've really crippled yourself. You
Yep.
shouldn't speak at all. The biggest thing the easiest thing to do is that you're not answering questions.
Yep.
They have no authority. You know what I mean? That's it. Like, first off, you can say, you know, what is your emergency? How can I help you with your emergency? And that's because they got their lights on and sirens going when they're pulling you over or whatever. If there's nothing, if there's no emergency, then you just don't answer questions. That's it. That's all. See, the thing about the registration, probably the same in the UK and Ireland, but when you go and register your vehicle to the government, you actually given them ownership of your vehicle. And now you're just an operator. So that's why they're allowed to tow your vehicle at their behest and all these kind of things. Once you deregister that and don't have their plates on your vehicle, if they're towing your vehicle, now that's actually theft. That constitutes as theft because they don't have any ownership rights to your vehicle and you've shown them that. So now then you can charge them with that as well. If you talk too much and you don't know, though, you can get yourself in trouble because what they try to do constantly is knock you back into their jurisdiction. And as soon as they get you in their jurisdiction, that's when they hammer you because they know that you're starting to play this game.
And by asking questions, that's all it takes to get, and that applies like in court as well. If you go in there as a common law man and you don't clearly state that you're here under special appearance as a man, and if they start asking you questions, or a woman, and they start asking you questions in court and you answer them with any kind of cognizance or any type of recognition of what they've just said, well, you're now in their jurisdiction, man, because they've just asked you in legalese to understand something, and you have, because you answered. So the best thing to do is just at the beginning, after you say that you're there by special appearance, is just say, I require paper, pen, and ink to properly answer this court. And then from that moment on, everything you submit to the judge is by notice, a handwritten notice. I, a man known as, and you word it that way. That way they can't get you back in their jurisdiction. And we know this works because we've had friends that have used this in court. And the judge just gets so frustrated with our friend Lindsay that he screamed in court and said, I have the jurisdiction here. And then he went and put a court date for 7 months from now, October sometime. So do you think if he had jurisdiction, he would have put a court date for 7 months from now? They would have railroaded you just like they drove over you like a bus, because that's what they're trained to do. A courthouse is a place of business. It's a place of commerce, you know, and they're trying to get the corporation that they created there in front of them so they can do business with you. That's the whole purpose of it.
Well, this is why I thought that if you did get a court summons, you shouldn't go, because if you go to the court, isn't that you agreeing and entering a contract with them?
It is, but you should return it. Anything you get sent in the post or by in person, you should return it to them. And there's a couple of ways to do it. You can do it by conditional acceptance upon their proof of a valid claim against I, a man, or you can just send it back, wrongful post, wrongful location. And there's a process for that too. Very dead simple. I send stuff back all the time in the mail to petty people, petty companies, whatever, that are trying to solicit me. And if you don't have it in your physical possession, then you can't ever be charged to acquiescing, which means agreeing to their terms.
So you can avoid court. You can avoid court by paper, right?
Yeah, because I've had 3 court cases in the last 2 years, and I've not been once.
Right, but you have to, if you just disregard the notice, then you've acquiesced to it. So you should at least return it. And there's some ways to do that by just returning the paperwork, like Sean was saying. But I've chosen to be in court because under common law, it's very difficult for you to bring a court forward That's like they block you under common law by bringing a court forward, even though you should be able to go in there and make a claim and have court, being that it's supposed to be a public courthouse. So I've chosen, because they've taken an action against me, they're bringing me into the court. So now I can take the opportunity to utilize that and turn that into a common law scenario and teach people things. And then the big thing is too, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you have to believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So initially, there's a little bit of fear because of the matrix and, you know, decades of indoctrination. So the worst case scenario, I lose my license and I get big fines for insurance issues. But the reality is those don't apply anyway.
Who loses their license?
And being that we're teaching people that you don't actually need that license, I'm not afraid of them taking it from me anyway, which they won't be able to do under common law because they won't have any jurisdiction. So it's the same thing. You got to step outside the matrix. You got to believe in what you're doing, and you got to take it forward. And when people see this action in play and they realize there's no more arguing, there's no more, oh, well, it's
where's the legal precedence
conspiracy thing, and that's just what people talk about. It doesn't work. Well, it does work because we've just showed you that it works.
I had a lawyer, like I think she was in Dalhousie, she was learning law, and she asked me, well, how come there's no precedence in common law? And I said, because your masters don't want there to be. They're blocking it. Anybody that wins in common law, do you think they're going to write precedents, legal precedents about that case? It's going to disappear like pseudo quick. They don't want anybody knowing about that. But we know it works because we know people that have worked in common law and have won in common law. Plenty of people. So
Yeah,
it's an absolutely true thing. But the judge loses his marbles over it whenever you mention it, especially when you say that word here by special appearance. Any black robe that hears that, they instantly throw a hissy fit if they know what it is you're trying to do, right? And there are some that know.
Well, I had a friend here who they've been trying to take her kids off her for years, and she's been through hell for at least 10 years, right? And she was in court about 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, and she's boned up on a lot of this stuff. And she said she knew his name, and she basically said, I don't stand under your whatever. I'm here as a natural woman of the land, not under maritime law. And she pointed at the judge and she said, and you, Seamus, whatever his name was, yes, what you're hearing down the lodge is true. They're coming for you, and we know who you are, and you're all complicit in child trafficking. And he just dismissed it. Dismissed the case.
Right.
Yep.
That's what they do. They dismiss it. They don't want it to be in the news. They don't want people to know it works. And then those people got to spread that word, and they got to show people that it does work. So we have to be lights. I mean, we're the ones that have to lead the people to realize, you know what I mean? You have to put yourself out there. There's people out there that are doing it, and they're just doing it for themselves, and they're not putting it out to the public. They're not telling, and that's fine. But that's preventing everybody else, and that's preventing us from being able to upset this corrupt system. You know, this is so much bigger than Sean and I in Canada and in the world, and your friend. It's so much bigger than all of us. So this is one of the ways that we can flip the system upside down, and we need to take control of that.
You know, on a daily basis, Mark, I get called a grifter by somebody in my communications through email or whatever, and they're and not realize, and you know what I'm saying, and not realizing that I'm doing all this without payment. I'm giving up all my time to travel hundreds of kilometers to teach and to talk. And sometimes we get lucky and we get some folks that realize the value of it and they help us with gas and whatnot. We're not into it for the money, man. I mean, Gordy and I could have just shut our mouths and just went about our lives and freed ourselves and not worried about anybody else. But I really think that it's a calling that's been put on both of us to educate and to bring this knowledge forward. Because our grandparents knew all about this stuff, but they never passed it on. In most cases, right?
No, I can feel that. You know, it is a calling. And a lot, you know, there's a lot of people standing up and doing this, and I applaud you for that. Now, there's tons of questions I've got about deregistering and stuff like that. But while you were talking, I was thinking there's a couple of people in Canada that I don't know if you've come across before that are pretty strong in this kind of common law, natural law, fighting the system movement. And there's one called Dr. Amanda Vollmer. Have you heard of her?
No.
She's
I have briefly, yeah.
she's well worth looking up because she has set up businesses that are out of the system. She sells stuff and advises people on something specifically called DMSO, which is derived from pine trees, which is a very, very powerful healing substance. And I interviewed her once on my show a couple of years ago. She's worth you guys going to do a bit of research. The other one is Kevin Annett. Have you heard of Kevin?
Yeah, I know who Kevin is.
Yeah.
I was part of his common law group for a while, but he started the whole Canada thing, and it started to get a little bit out of control. So we backed off from that. I don't know for sure everything Kevin teaches, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I followed him like 10 years ago, but and there's also the Queen Romana, is it, who says she's the Queen of Canada? You've got a lot of characters there, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's some characters. Yeah.
If you want to put a pin, a grifter pin on somebody, I mean, that would be a good place to start, in my opinion.
Well, this is the thing, right? This is why people find. This is why people will say you're a grifter, I'm a grifter, blah blah. They'll say this because it's such an easy thing to muddy the waters. You know, when you're in the middle of, which is essentially a takeover of planet Earth, then they knew that people would stand up and fight against it. So they have to put infiltrators in, and they have to put fake people in, because then that breaks down the trust people have in other people. And then, but I actually think that's all part of God's plan, to be honest, because I think what it's taught everybody is true intuition. Everybody's really had to break through the bullshit to find out who they can trust, and then go forward with that stuff. Which is why this whole, I call it spiritual quarantine, in the last 3 years, the whole system, this whole thing has taken so long to get to the point where action is actually being taken. But it does come down, and I very strongly agree with everything you're doing, because I strongly believe that God wants everybody to stand up and, you know, and actually do something about the situation that we're in. And this is fundamental. The law side of things is fundamental to this, because we've all been completely conned, you know. And I years ago I did a meme saying that, you know, because I after the TV license thing, I decided then that they couldn't any longer tell me where to park. So I just parked where I wanted, and I got to the car and there was a ticket, and my kids would take the ticket and go and stick it on a fence. And then we'd start getting the letters, and then I realized about the responding thing. So I'd respond to them saying, you know, I have no contract with you. This is blah, blah, blah. And we must have done that with 30 or 40 parking tickets. And then we moved country. But at the time, I was really quite enjoying that, because I was just stepping into my power. But I wanted to leave the UK because the UK was becoming like a surveillance state then, back in 2014. I mean, now they've got 15-minute cities popping up in Oxford and Bath, and it's like, and it's not long before it comes here to Ireland either. So it's just like fighting the tide. But it can be done if we stand in our power and get more knowledgeable. But when you're driving around Canada and you're doing talks with 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, it's a slow process, which is why I wanted to get you on this show. And anybody watching this that has a podcast, get these guys on, spread the word. But also, even though if you're watching this and you're not from Canada, there's still important lessons to be learned, because the law is fundamentally the same worldwide, isn't it?
Any Commonwealth state or province or country that has common law as one of their original laws, as one of their original systems. It applies everywhere: Australia, the UK, Ireland, Canada, United States, and probably a whole list of other places. One problem we have is in Quebec, they go on a different system there. It's more like France. It's code law. They use a whole different system of law there. But there is a foundational usage of common law in Quebec when you go way back further into the records. So we're going to help everybody that wants our help, and we're hoping to build this into some enormousness. We'd like thousands of members in the CCC and people that are willing to stand up. And I'll give you an example. The person that we're speaking to about the bonds for driving or for traveling with your private automobile says that currently there's roughly 300 of those bonds out right now, including some in Ontario, Canada. And out of those 300, there was 15 vehicles seized. And I think out of the 15, there was a number of them, 7 of them that have been returned. So I mean, where's the risk really? You know what I'm saying? Like, where is the real risk? What are you afraid of? You know, we're teaching people how to use common law, and not so they don't have to spend a bunch of money. I mean, it's just to get themselves freed from this corrupt system we're dealing with, right? Get out from under it. There's a lady in the UK that we were watching. She's been traveling for 25 plus years without any form of driver's license or insurance or even registration from the UK or anything. And she's been doing it basically the same way. She's got her automobile in a private trust. So that way they have no rights to it whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, they tried seizing her automobile. And in one circumstance, she had it back the same day and didn't even have to pay any impound fees. All she did is she went and she made the trust document. She made a little bit of official letterhead, wrote a letter and said, yeah, it's owned by this trust. Oh, and by the way, they want that vehicle by the end of the day, or else there's going to be an issue because it's theirs and they're claiming ownership of it.
Yeah, well, I'm in the process of setting up a private trust and putting everything in, including the DNA of my children and myself and everything. The first thing I did, though, was I deregistered from the, and you probably know this better than me, there's like a website in America, I think it's called the NCC or something like that, where you deregister as a corporation.
I'm familiar with the US one. But here in Nova Scotia, actually, this coming week, I'm going down to our DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles. And there is a form, it's called a deregistration of automobile form that I'm going to be getting. And I'm going to videotape it. And I'm not going to turn the video on, but the sound will be on. And I'm going to grill them, ask them some questions about it. Because there's one section in there where they basically state, if you don't have registration from the province or corporation of Canada, that you have to destroy your automobile, right, and remove the VIN number and have it destroyed. So what gives them the authority to tell you what you can do with your own property, especially if it's not registered? There's no contract there.
Exactly. But so deregistering things like this, so your process is you've got to get the wet signature of your birth, first thing, most important thing, yeah. And then deregister things like driving license, car registration. Presumably, you go into then not paying your electricity bills or local taxes or national taxes. Do you go down those roads?
That's up to the individual. That's up to the individual. We're going to deal more with the right to travel and CPS and small claims, how to put a proper common law claim in, and what courts to use and what corrupt court, I should say, to use, because there are still some that deal in claims. So we're going to go through that process. Whether or not someone pays their property tax or whatever, that's going to be entirely up to them if they want to adhere to those contracts or not. Some of us have opted out of that system completely, but we're not going to teach people and say, yeah, just start tomorrow and stop paying everything. I'm not
at this juncture. I mean, we're just scratching the surface. This is just the beginning stages. First of all, we can really affect the policy enforcers financially by taking away all their power and authority. Like, for example, when you go into the maxims of law, and that all applies, if there's no victim, there's no crime. And that's one of the maxims of law. And these apply to the legal system as well. They use this, like this is their basis as well. So the trickery is like, so you run a stop sign, no damage is done, you never hit no other car, there was no accident, you just missed it or what have you, and you get a ticket, but there's no victim. So what is a ticket for? Really? So it's just financial, they're just making money off the backs of people without their being aware. So we're just scratching the surface there. But then you're right, as you get farther down, then there is all these avenues of electricity bills and all these other things that come into play, and mortgages and all that. But at this stage, we're not there yet.
Because
I try and remind folks that statutory law. Sorry, Mark. Statutory law is not law. It's given the color of law, and the color of law means that it only applies within their corporation. It's almost like a mandate in a way, where mandates aren't laws; they're just suggestions, and they only apply if you give it power. So a statutory law, you've broken some motor vehicle code, a statutory infringement or a statutory fine. Well, there's no injured party because I don't think Mr. and Mrs. Motor Vehicle Code 53C is going to stand up in court and say you did them harm. So all you've done is you've broken one of their internal governmental suggestions. It's not even law. It's law within their corporation. But if you stand outside of that corporation as I, the man, or I, the woman, then you're not part of that. You're not bound to that.
Right. And the key to that is you can't have a contract between a man and a corporation.
Yep.
So the only way they can contract with you is via the corporate birth certificate, driver's license, so on and so forth. So once you step outside that and you're just a man, they have no contract. And legally speaking, you can't contract between a man and a corporation. It has to be corporation to corporation or man to man. Right?
But of course, the biggest weapon they have, apart from yellow paint and red ink, is those people that dress up in outfits and pretend that they are in charge of everything. And I was watching a video yesterday of a protest in Dublin where the guards were actually manhandling people, which is totally against the law because they were committing assault. Yeah. But they would not answer any questions. Like they're not even human anymore at this stage. How's the state of the police in Canada?
Well, we just had the same thing happen in Montreal yesterday.
Yep.
They started, there's a protest up there, and you see the vans and the police on the horses, the policy enforcers, and the megaphones, and telling them that, you know, they're putting the public at harm. And, you know, so
some of them are so cowardly, Mark, that they even cover their identification badge, their name. They cover it.
Yeah, well, this guy wouldn't answer that question. There's a really great citizen journalist here called Philip Dwyer, who's making some great stuff at the moment, you know, getting all this stuff on record, right, over in Dublin especially, because there's a lot going on there. And he had this guard, and he said, "What's your name? It's your legal obligation to tell me your name." And the guy just gave his number, and he just refused to give his name. And then a minute ago, he was pulling people around. They're literally breaking the law, and it's all on camera. And this is the thing that cracks me up, because they're on the wrong side of history, and all of this is being recorded. Well, what is, yeah, this is off subject slightly, but I just don't get them, you know, because their families are going to be subject to the same bullshit that the rest of us are having to cope with.
I think what it is they think that they're going to have some sort of position of power in this new world order that they're trying to ascertain. They think they're going to be policymakers or power brokers in it.
I think they're cowards. I don't think they can stand on their own. And what they don't understand, and I've been telling police and the military here when I'm out too, as much as I can now, they're just being used. They're just puppets. And the truth of the matter is they don't need them. And anybody that looks deep enough, there's enough technology out there now that they don't need police or military. They can crowd control with electronics and you know, the things that they can do, you know, robotics and with the 5G and all the frequencies and stuff, like they can have your skin temperature at 130 degrees in a second and a half. Yep. So if that doesn't do crowd control, I don't know what will, because physically you can't stand that. So these people think that they're useful, but they're just being used, and just probably quicker than us. They're going to throw them under the bus when they have no use for them anymore, right? And they don't see that, and they gotta some point in time they gotta get into their soul and realize, you know, what side of this am I on? You know, where do I stand? Because it's going to affect them like it affects us.
Well, precisely my point, and that's also why it's important people watch and share this and get involved as much as you can, because we have to get to a point where there's like a critical mass where it's really affecting their coffers, you know, or, you know, on a consciousness level, because we can't just sit and let them carry on. We have to do something, right?
Yeah. Well, I used to have dealings with these people years ago before I knew a lot about common law. And I got a letter one time, and it was very telling the way it was worded. And I pay attention to words because I think they're important, and especially the legal meanings of words. That's why I study Black's Law dictionaries and whatnot, and taken every legal form I could get my hands on to decipher it, the wording. But anyway, it said basically that this letter that you wrote us has no legal effect. And so I got thinking to myself, so they're looking for a letter of legal effect. put weight to your words or don't speak. So I got to figure out that my remedy at that time was to write an actual affidavit up with 36 points that they had to rebut with their own affidavit, each point signed by their wedding signature under their full commercial liability, which they're not able to do. As you know, a corporation is not able to give its full commercial liability. That would be insane for them to do that. So then when I started approaching things that way, putting weight to my words, that's when I started to notice that things were starting to change. But the other thing is like I told Gordy at the last rally, until we start holding these policy enforcers personally liable as a man or a woman for a trespass that they do against us, nothing will change until we do that. But the minute we do that, you're going to see it turned on its head. I really believe that. It'll be right upside down land at that point.
Well, just to back that up, I had another incident for me was that I told the British government that I was not going to pay them any more taxes because they were spending it on killing babies and children in foreign lands in wars that I didn't support. And then they came after me, and then they sold it to debt recovery people. And then I just kicked the can down the road for a few years. And then I eventually thought, I'm going to have to sort this out because they just kept coming and coming and coming, right? But lots of noise, lots of letters, I got a solicitor involved, ended up giving him thousands, even though I knew they were in the game, but I was just going through a divorce. I couldn't quite deal with it at the time. But once I got my head together, I was like, I've got to deal with this. So I ended up writing to the directors of the company that was chasing me for the money personally at their homes. And I sent them a big letter each, sent it to them. And I got an email back because I didn't put a physical address on it, saying, this sounds like something you downloaded off the internet. We'll see you in court. So then I went back with another one. And then a week later, the solicitor that I'd been using rang me and said, that's gone away. I was like, oh.
So there you go.
But
so
the
you
intimidation,
knew that there was some truth.
Yeah, they'll just refuse to accept what you're saying. They'll do anything to intimidate you. I'm explaining this for the viewers, not you guys. You know this. But as Sean and Gordy have said, if you stand in your power, you really are powerful. We really are powerful. Why do you think they come after us so much? Why do you think they want us under their control so much? Because we're really powerful. Otherwise,
why are they hiding common law so much? Why are they refusing to? You can almost find no information about it on the internet on a generic search. Why are they hiding it? What are they afraid of?
They are absolutely afraid of us. And once we realize our power across the world, they're afraid of us. If we can wake up and come together, this is over. It ends quickly. So when you talk to people about why they're not willing to fight, or why they're not going to go to protest, or why they're not going to do any of these things, and then they got these fears. Well, same thing with work. Like you're mandated for this, or you lose your job. Well, I can't. I'm afraid to lose my job, but I keep trying to tell people now, and you can attest to that too. Everything that you're afraid to lose, they plan on taking everything. They're taking it anyway, all of it. So you have nothing to lose, and actually you have everything to gain by fighting. So if you're just going to sit there and let it happen, it's going to happen. If you don't try to stand up and prevent it from happening or take your power back, then you're lost. 100%.
So I'm just going to share your YouTube channel here on screen for the viewers.
Oh, great. Thank you, Mark.
And you've made a lot. How many videos? You've done quite a few, haven't you? 463. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's around 400 and some, yeah. I started on YouTube about 13 years ago, I think, or 14 years ago. And initially it was just music video, like my guitar playing and whatnot, but it morphed into this at a necessity more than anything. And people have been asking me, how come you don't do mechanical videos anymore? Because I did get a lot of views from that, because I am a mechanic, but I just don't have the heart to do that because there's more important things to teach. I'm trying to teach my fellow countrymen how to stand up and how to be a lawful man. And you can look tyranny directly in the eye that way. There's power in that. And that's what we're after, especially with this association. They use associations all the time against us. So it's about time we turn the tables and start using associations against them. And there's power in numbers. And anyone that's seen those large protests in Europe know that there's power in numbers. Ask the Irish people if there's power in numbers. They know. Friggin' right, man. You see all those hundreds of thousands of them lined up?
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough police, military in the world that can curtail that kind of power.
Yeah. So
Fire association, fire membership association.
How do people join this? How do people join this thing? I mean, there's your YouTube channel, but how do they actually engage with you and go further?
Well, we have an email that we can send to folks if they want to contact us, but we haven't actually put out the call for membership yet because we're being very careful how we set this up. We want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So they can't come after us later and say, well, you guys are making fake IDs or you guys are doing this or doing that. We're doing this correctly. And we're going to have a trust. The minute you have membership money change hands, like say it's 30, I'm just going to say a number, $30 for a membership. The minute you have membership money change hands, it becomes a trust automatically. So we're working out a declaration, a constitution. There's going to be rules that people have to follow. And we're going to stand behind these folks and show them every step of the way how to use this. But we're also going to show people how it's used by doing it ourselves. So we're not just talking the talk, we're walking the walk. And like Gordy and I said, that's the important thing more than anything, is to show them how you can do it and not be afraid.
Fantastic. So you guys watching, subscribe to the YouTube channel. When you've got this ready to go, come back on and we'll promote that and tell some more stories, because
awesome.
I think it's really good when people hear actual real life stuff. Like I've just shared a few with my own stuff, and you're talking about going to court. I mean, that's the key to this. It's people believing it, you know. And there are good people in the UK doing this. There's a woman called Stacey's World Rocks. I bumped into her accidentally. She's just been going around the country telling people to just unplug, stop paying this, stop paying that, and she's happy as a Larry in a mobile home, just driving around the country. There's Sovereign Pete in the UK. He's actually put a website together with loads of forms and information. You guys watching this, I'm telling you, go and have a look at these. There's my friend Peter, who's set up claimyourstrawman.com. So the more people that do get this information out in as many jurisdictions, the key to this is that there is strength in numbers, and it's a trickle at the moment, but that trickle is going to become a gush. And when it is a gush, like you said, Gordy, it's over.
Yeah, it's so the private membership association idea, and like Sean was saying about doing it properly, we paid attention to a lot of people that have made mistakes in the past few years, and we're just trying to learn from their mistakes. So one thing in a traffic stop, the very first thing that they ask for is a driver's license. So initially they say they want the driver's license because that's the ID, but the truth is that's the binder to the contract. So once you use that, you've contracted with them. So we're teaching people to not give them the driver's license. And then in Canada, at least, then sometimes the real bully, the real pushy guys they're going to charge you with failure to identify. If you're not going to tell them who you are, but a failure to identify. So then we decided about talking about creating identification cards. And then legally speaking, to create if you create an identification card inside a private membership association, that's all legal. There's nothing unlawful. So they can't say you're passing them false identification. They can't say you're failing to identify. The actual identification card is going to be based on the live birth record that you're going to have in your vehicle package, proving that this is you. So these are the little intricacies that we're working all out before we launch everything and get it all going. So it's all about board, right? Same with the bonding. You don't need insurance to travel in your property on a public road. However, being that common law, you're personally responsible for all harm that you cause to another man or woman. If you don't have the financial wherewithal to pay for damages out of pocket, and you're traveling around knowing that, and you do cause harm, then you're going to cripple yourself. because you're going to be accountable, and that's going to totally bankrupt people, and we don't want that to happen. There's people in Canada even traveling without insurance, but we're trying to be responsible, and by having a third party liability, a bond of some sort, that protects people, and we can do that outside of their system as well. So that's another intricacy that we're working on too.
Well, that's really good, because insurance is one of the biggest rip-offs ever created on this planet, and especially in this country, they know that the insurance is really high, and they do have meetings about it, but they never go past. They just complain about it. They never go past the system itself.
Right.
And they try and lobby.
That's why they're in collusion here in Canada. Right. And here in Canada, when you go to register your vehicle at the DMV, if you don't have proof of insurance, they won't let you register it. But then when you go to the insurance company, if you don't have proof of registration, they won't let you have insurance. So they're all in collusion. So we got to break that collusion, right?
Absolutely.
As George Carlin says, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
My favorite comedian, him and Bill Hicks keep me going. I really appreciate you coming on, guys. I've run out of time today, but thank you for doing what you're doing. Thanks for coming on the show. You guys watching, you know where to find these guys. Support them in any way you can and start doing something.
Thank you, guys. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you again.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Building your online business? Go to Wix.com and set up your store on a single integrated platform. Add products, showcase them dynamically, and seamlessly track your inventory. Accept multiple secure payments, and design your storefront down to the very last detail. Get all the tools you need. Drive more sales with customizable gift cards and flexible product subscriptions. Retain customers with a point-based loyalty program, email automations, and reach millions with sales channel integrations. Complete your setup with a personalized analytics dashboard. Make smart business decisions and shape the next phase of your business. Build, manage, and grow from one place. Go to Wix and launch your online business today.
From an international law expert that this National Defense Authorization Act, which was rammed through at the very end of the last Congress, contains within it something called the International Pandemic Preparedness Act. And I think most people in Congress don't even know about this. But that act contains a loophole in it, which he argues, and I agree, makes it that whatever the World Health Organization passes is automatically made law in the United States, again, subverting our Senate. So this needs to be opposed. And in fact, I think that the entire World Health Organization attempt to take over the world, really, through vaccine passports. That's another thing that they want to do. The World Health Organization, if these things are passed, will have the ability to mandate in the United States how we handle a pandemic, including forced quarantines, forced mask mandates, forced vaccine mandates. Why should we allow Dr. Tedros, who failed so miserably in handling the Wuhan virus, order us around about how we handle our own health? So I think that we should actually withdraw from the WHO, and we are calling for there's a bill that is.
Welcome to the Mark Atwood Show, Adventures in a Cosmic Suit.